My name is Captain Eva Hall, 35 years old. My third deployment just wrapped. Iraq again. Same dust, same heat. Same body bags zipped up in silence. But this time a feeling in my gut said, don't tell anyone you're coming home. So I didn't. I didn't text, didn't call, didn't post some coming home photo with a filter and a flag. I packed my ruck, handed in my rifle, and flew 22 hours back to American soil without so much as a whisper. By the time my boots hit the sidewalk outside my grandparents' house in Masonville, Virginia, the sun was setting low and angry behind the oak trees. The porch light was off. That was the first bad sign. The second was no answer at the door. I still had my key. The same brass one Grandpa gave me when I turned 13. You ever need to get inside? He said. This still works. And it did. The lock clicked and I stepped into a silence that pressed on my chest like a concrete slab. The house smelled wrong. Not dirty, not rotten, just empty. Hollow. Like no one had breathed inside it for too long. I called out for Grandma. Nothing. I checked the living room first. Neat as always. Blanket folded. TV remote aligned with surgical precision. Then the kitchen, then her garden boots by the back door, then the master bedroom. That's where I found her. She was in the hospital bed we'd set up 2 years ago after her stroke. Same blue sheets, same floral pillowcase, but now there were machines. Quiet ones, cold ones. Oxygen hissed in soft pulses. A monitor blinked a dull green. Her hands were limp. One eye was half open like she was trying to wake up but couldn't decide if it was worth the trouble. No nurse, no aide, no family. Just her and the machines and me. I stood there for 5 minutes before I could move. My stomach felt like it was made of sand and steel and bad memories. I checked her wiped the corner of her mouth with a tissue, adjusted her blanket. I whispered, "It's me, Grandma. Eva's home." She didn't stir. I looked around. Not a single get well card. No water glass. No fresh flowers. Just silence. That's when I pulled out my phone. Maybe I missed something. No messages from Mom. No voicemails from Dad. Just one fresh Facebook post, time-stamped an hour ago. Sunsets in Cabo never get old. No regrets. Retired life. Finally free. My parents were holding cocktails on a beach, smiling like they didn't have a mother with 1 foot already across the line. And that's when something inside me stopped being military-grade numb and turned sharp. This wasn't forgetfulness. This wasn't busyness. This was abandonment. I walked down the hall past the old photo of Grandpa in his Navy uniform. He looked straight into the camera like he was looking through time at me. His safe was in the study, the same one he kept locked when I was a kid. Everyone thought it held gold coins or secret documents. Only he and I knew the truth. He told me once back when I got my commission, if anything happens to me or her and they don't show up, open the safe. You'll know what to do. He meant they, of course. My parents. His own son and daughter-in-law. I knelt, typed the code, my service number. The safe clicked open like it had just been waiting. Inside was a thick envelope. My name was written in that hard all-caps handwriting of his. Eva, if you're reading this, it means I trusted you to be here. I took a breath, then opened it, and I felt the wind shift. There was no cash inside the envelope, no keys, no offshore account numbers. Just paper. 4 sheets of it, to be exact. 3 were typed, 1 was handwritten. The typed ones were legal thick stock. Notarized at the bottom, dated 2 years ago. Title, Last Will and Testament of James Henry Hall. Grandpa's full name. Navy veteran, World War II. Son of a Virginia coal miner. Husband, father, betrayed man. The will was clean, cold, unapologetic. If my son and daughter-in-law are not physically present within 12 hours of either my or my wife's incapacitation or passing, they forfeit all inheritance rights, financial or otherwise. 12 hours. Grandma had been on life support for 3 days. I checked the hospital records later to be sure. In such event, all property, liquid or fixed, is to be transferred to my granddaughter, Captain Eva Hall, United States Army, the only person in this family to uphold the values of honor, duty, and presence. That was the word that hit me hardest. Presence. He didn't say love or loyalty or even blood. He said presence. Because showing up matters more than posting photos with margaritas. I stared at that clause for a long time. My fingers were trembling, but not from shock, from recognition. He saw it coming. Grandpa knew they'd vanish when it mattered most. Not out of malice. Out of habit. Out of selfishness dressed in self-care. They always said things like, "We've earned our peace," or "It's our time now," as if raising children meant you could just erase your parents when they got inconvenient. The fourth page, the handwritten one, was just for me. "Eva, if you're reading this, then they failed the final test. Don't feel guilty. Don't argue. Don't negotiate. Just execute what's written. They chose the beach. You chose the bedside. That's all the court will need to know. P.S. The lawyer's name is Gregory Thorne. His number's taped under the drawer. He's been waiting for this." I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stood up, walked to the desk, peeled back the underside of the top drawer, and found the number scribbled in fading Sharpie. Gregory Thorne. He picked up on the second ring. "Captain Hall," he said calmly, like we'd spoken yesterday. "Your grandfather told me if you were the one calling, it meant the rest of them weren't worth a dime. I'm guessing it's time." "It's time," I said. "Good," he replied. "I'll file the trigger clause immediately. You don't need to do anything else. You being there is proof enough." I gave him the hospital's fax number and hung up. Then I sat back in Grandpa's study, still in uniform, still covered in airport dust, and waited for the storm to start. I didn't have to wait long. 10 minutes later, the hospital called my mother. 15 minutes after that, I heard the first ping on my phone. Then another, then another. I didn't answer. I watched the sun crawl down the wall like it had somewhere better to be. Watched Grandma's monitor pulse like a slow heartbeat that refused to quit just yet. After 2 hours, I finally looked at my phone again. 19 missed calls from my mother, my father, their lawyer, even my little brother. The one who hadn't called Grandma in 6 months but was suddenly deeply concerned. They still hadn't arrived. They hadn't even booked a flight, but they had called again and again and again. By 10 a.m., the missed call count had passed 180. I didn't answer a single one. Instead, I met with Gregory Thorne at the hospital's administrative office. He was older than I expected, maybe late 70s. Crisp beige suit, hands that looked like they'd once turned wrenches. A former Marine, judging by the faded tattoo peeking out beneath his cuff. He greeted me like I was family. "James was a damn good man," he said. "Trusted you more than he trusted oxygen." We walked through the paperwork together. The trigger clause was airtight. My grandfather hadn't just written a will. He'd written a damn operation manual. He had pre-authorized me to make medical decisions for both himself and Grandma in the event of parental absence. Had assigned me executor of the estate, listed precise bank accounts, contingencies, and even a modest $5,000 donation to the Masonville War Memorial with the words, "For the forgotten ones who showed up anyway." I signed where I needed to, calmly, without a lawyer of my own. Gregory handled everything. And then came the call that shifted everything. Hospital administration received confirmation my parents would not be arriving within the required window. Their reason? Travel conflict and emotional distress. I nearly laughed. They had 3 days. 3 whole days. And in that time they posted 17 photos from Cabo. Boat cruises, lobster tail, spa selfies, and one particularly obnoxious caption that read, "Learning to finally live. No guilt, no obligations." No obligations, huh? Well, now they had no legal claim either. At 11:32 a.m., I stood beside Grandma's bed and signed the authorization for full hospice transition. No more machines, no more tubes. Just comfort and dignity. What she should have had days ago. I held her hand as the nurse gently removed the 4-line and dimmed the room lights. She didn't wake up, didn't flinch, but I swear her breathing slowed, settled like her body finally knew it was allowed to stop fighting. I whispered, "I'm here, Grandma. I'm still here." And then I sat down and waited. It wasn't a dramatic scene. No music, no gasp, no tear rolling down her cheek. Just silence and stillness. And then peace. At 12:14 p.m., Grandma Hall passed away. And 10 seconds later, my phone vibrated again. This time I picked up just once. It was my mother. Her voice was shrill, breathless, panicked. "Eva, what did you do? What the hell did you do?" "She's gone," I said flatly. "What? You don't get to make that decision. We're the family. You weren't here. I gave you 3 days. We were in Cabo. Your father needed rest. You don't know what we've..." "She's gone, Mom." and the will has already been executed. You can call your lawyer or you can call a therapist. I don't care which. You cold-hearted little. I ended the call and turned off the phone. She didn't call back, not for another hour. And when she did, the count began again. By 3 p.m., another 41 missed calls from her, from my father, from their lawyer, from 3 numbers I didn't recognize. Probably cousins they hadn't spoken to in years, suddenly concerned. But the switch had already flipped. The documents were filed. The accounts were locked. The house was mine. The land, the savings, the name. All of it had changed hands without a single shout, without a fight, without a fist raised or a door slammed. Because the truth is, real power doesn't need to scream. It just signs the papers and lets the silence do the work. They landed the next morning. Private car from Dallas, designer luggage, sunglasses too large for the storm they were about to walk into. I heard the tires on the gravel before I saw them. From Grandma's bedroom window, I watched as my father stepped out first, jaw tight, shoulders rigid. He always postured like he was still in charge of something. My mother followed behind, phone in hand, already barking into it. Her lips moved fast. Her free hand waved like she was swatting away the air. Probably some lawyer on the line or her therapist or one of those friends who only existed for brunch and gossip. They didn't knock. Of course they didn't. They walked in like they still owned the place, like nothing had changed. I stayed seated in Grandpa's study, papers in front of me. Mug of black coffee beside an old brass lamp. The envelope still sat there. So did the photo of him and Grandma, both in uniform, taken in 1951. They looked proud, tired, real. Footsteps. Then the door opened. My mother appeared first. She didn't greet me, just stared at the envelope on the desk like it had insulted her personally. My father stood behind her, silent but red in the face. You don't have the right, she snapped. You had no authority to make that call. You had 3 days, I said. 3 days to come home. She died alone. That's on you. You think this is about you? About your little uniform fantasy and control? No, I said calmly. It's about her and Grandpa and showing up. Something you stopped doing a long time ago. My father spoke then, voice like gravel. You're making a mistake, Eva. This will be undone. I've already talked to Michael. We'll sue. I raised an eyebrow. You mean Michael, your lawyer, or Michael, your golf buddy? Because I doubt either of them can erase a notarized will, 2 hospital timestamps, and a damn good memory. James was senile when he wrote that. My mother hissed. No, I corrected. He was furious. But clear. Crystal. And I have the video to prove it. Her face froze. What video? I reached into the drawer, pulled out a USB drive, and tossed it lightly onto the desk. He recorded it a year ago. Addressed it to whoever contested the will. Said if they couldn't show their face when it counted, they didn't deserve a cent of his name. My father stepped forward like he might try to take it. I didn't flinch. Try it, I said quietly. Try reaching across this desk and grabbing something that doesn't belong to you anymore. His hand froze in midair. There was a moment of pure silence. Then he lowered it. My mother turned to him, voice cracking. We're not going to let her get away with this. She's not getting away with anything, I said, voice low. She stayed. You left. That's it. My mother's face twisted into something ugly, something almost childlike. She was our mother. And my grandmother, I said. One of us was holding her hand when she died. One of us was checking into a spa. You vindictive little. She asked for you. I cut in. In the final hour, still hoping you'd come. Still making excuses for you. I didn't say anything. I just sat there. Because she didn't need excuses. She needed family. They didn't speak. Not for a while. Just stood there absorbing it, or trying to figure out how to spin it. Eventually my father turned away. Not in shame but in calculation. You could see the gears turning. They didn't cry. They didn't apologize. They just walked out of the room. The door didn't slam. No theatrics. Just the quiet click of entitlement exiting the building. Later that afternoon, their lawyer called me directly. Offered to mediate a resolution. I declined. They tried to file a motion to contest the will the next day. Claimed emotional duress. Gregory handled it before lunch. The court dismissed the motion before it even reached a hearing. No standing, they said. 2 weeks later, I received a certified letter. My parents had hired a PR firm to craft a statement claiming estrangement and abuse from my grandparents, painting themselves as victims of a controlling patriarch and emotionally distant daughter. I posted nothing, said nothing. Didn't need to. Truth doesn't always shout. Sometimes it just stands its ground and waits for the lies to rot in daylight. And so I stayed in that house, cleaned the guest room, donated Grandma's wardrobe to the church, sat out back on the old bench where Grandpa used to smoke and tell me war stories. The silence wasn't empty anymore. It was earned. 3 months later, I was served. They went through with it. Filed a formal lawsuit against me in state court. Undue influence, elder coercion, fraudulent executor claim. Real dramatic stuff. The kind of language you hire when you can't win on facts, so you throw words like darts and hope one sticks. Gregory just chuckled when I handed him the envelope. They're desperate, he said, flipping through the pages. They've got no case, but they want noise. I nodded. Let them make noise. I'll bring the silence. The court date was set. Mid-June, small county courthouse. No jury, just a judge, a recorder, and whatever dignity they could scrounge up. I wore my uniform that day, not out of show, just because it felt right. It still smelled like desert dust and hospital floors. I hadn't cleaned it. I didn't want to. They arrived flanked by 2 lawyers and a third guy in a $2,000 suit, who looked like he thought he was the smartest man in the room. He tried to smile at me. I didn't return it. When the judge asked for opening statements, their attorney went full melodrama. Captain Hall, though an admirable soldier, used her presence during a moment of family tragedy to manipulate her grandparents into disinheriting their only son. She isolated them, pressured them emotionally. We believe she exerted undue influence at a time when they were most vulnerable. He sat down like he just delivered the Gettysburg Address. The judge didn't even blink. Gregory stood next. No long words, Your Honor. Just facts. He walked over, plugged in a small flash drive, and hit play. The screen flickered to life. There was Grandpa sitting in his recliner, same gray cardigan, same blue plaid blanket over his knees. He looked into the camera with those same ice blue eyes I grew up under. If you're watching this, it means I'm probably dead or close. So let's skip the niceties. He leaned in. I wrote the will myself. Every word. Nobody told me what to say. Nobody held my hand. The girl who will play this video, Captain Eva Hall, is the only one in this family who still understands what it means to show up when it's hard. My son, God bless him, is too busy golfing. His wife can't miss a massage. They'll say I was confused, that I was manipulated. Let me be clear. I've got more mental clarity than most of Congress. And if they weren't there when their own mother was dying, they don't deserve the dirt under her fingernails. He looked straight down the lens. Eva, this is war. But I trained you for that. Hold the line. Then the screen went black. Silence in the courtroom. Real silence. The kind that wraps around throats and dares anyone to swallow. The judge turned to their lawyer. Do you have anything to contradict this video? Medical records, doctor statements, anything other than theory? Their lawyer shuffled papers, flipped, blinked. Your Honor, we believe the video is emotionally charged. But that's a no. Then Gregory stood again. I have one witness to call. Captain Eva Hall. I took the stand. Didn't cry. Didn't preach. I told the truth about the night I came home. The machines, the empty house, the Facebook post, the silence. I described Grandma's final moments, her cold hand in mine, the slight lift of her chest, the last sigh of someone who waited just long enough to be seen. I ended with the line that mattered most. I didn't ask to inherit anything. I just stayed and they didn't. The judge thanked me. No cross-examination. He took 10 minutes in chambers. When he returned, he read from a paper that would become part of public record. This court finds no evidence of coercion or fraud. The decedent's statements are consistent, intentional, and damning. The plaintiff's absence during their parents' final days speaks louder than any legal brief. Captain Hall is the lawful executor and sole beneficiary. Case dismissed with prejudice. No fanfare, no gavel slam, just truth on paper and ink. As I stood up to leave, my mother hissed under her breath. You'll regret this. I looked at her one last time. Not with anger, not even pity. Just this cold, detached clarity like you get when you finally see mold growing behind a wall and wonder how long it's been there festering behind the paint. I already regretted it, I said. Every birthday you forgot her. Every anniversary you skipped. Every time she asked me if you'd call, and I lied. Then I turned my back, walked out of the courthouse and didn't look back. I moved back into the house for a while. Not forever. I didn't belong in that sleepy neighborhood of retirees and cracked sidewalks. But I couldn't leave right away either. There was something unfinished here. The kind of quiet that doesn't feel empty, just waiting. I kept Grandma's room just as it was. I folded her blanket, watered her violets, left the chair by the window untouched. Some mornings I sat there, coffee in hand, letting the sun creep in across the floorboards the way it always had. I could almost hear her voice, low, warm, still calling me Evie like I was 5. They stopped calling after the ruling. First it was silence from my parents, then a trickle of venom online. Not from them directly, of course. They weren't that brave, but from their orbit. Distant cousins, family friends, folks I hadn't seen since I was 12, who suddenly had opinions about loyalty and legacy. I ignored them all. Instead, I spent my days going through Grandpa's study. Letters, journals, receipts from 1983. He kept everything, but not out of sentiment, out of precision. The way a man trained to count bullets also counts blessings. One morning I found something unexpected. A box labeled for the fold. Inside was his burial flag, the one from his Navy funeral, perfectly trifolded and wrapped in plastic. And under it, a note. I already had my honors. Don't bury me again. Give this to someone who will remember what it meant. I stared at that triangle of stars and stripes for a long time. That night I drove out to Arlington, parked just before sunset, walked through rows of silence, gravel crunching beneath my boots until I found his headstone. James Henry Hall, Chief Petty Officer, U.S. Navy, 1923 to 2004. Honor before comfort. I stood there until the sky turned lavender. Then I knelt and placed the flag beneath his name. No words, no prayer, just presence. I didn't notice the man until he spoke. You were his. I turned. An old man in a wheelchair, leather jacket, faded cap that read USS Missouri. His eyes were roomy but sharp. I was his granddaughter, I said. He nodded slowly. I served under him. Korea. 1951. Toughest bastard I ever knew. We talked for 10 minutes about the ship, the drills, how Grandpa once decked a lieutenant for trying to dock drunk. Got a week in the brig and a standing ovation, the man said, chuckling. I gave him the folded flag. He looked at me like I'd handed him gold. That's not mine to keep. I think he'd want you to have it, I said. Someone who remembers. He blinked twice, saluted me. I saluted back. Then I left. Back at the house, I cleaned out the last closet. Found a shoebox full of my childhood drawings. One had a stick figure version of me in uniform standing beside a gray-haired man with a huge American flag behind us. I'd scribbled underneath it, I will protect you when you get old, Grandpa. I didn't remember drawing it, but I knew it was true. I did protect him and her, even if it meant cutting out my own blood, even if it meant walking alone. Because that's the thing about silence. Real silence. It doesn't mean you lost the argument. It means you ended it permanently. No rebuttals, no spin, just truth left standing where everything else collapsed. And once you've learned to live in that silence, you never go back to noise. The inheritance wasn't enormous. Some land, the house, a few investment accounts. Grandpa wasn't the kind to hoard wealth. He believed money should do something, not just sit around collecting dust and resentment. I sold the beachfront condo they'd left behind, the one my parents used to visit once a year just to take pictures for Christmas cards. They didn't even notice it was gone. They'd moved on to a new campaign, public sympathy. A month after the court ruling, my father published an op-ed in some online magazine for estranged fathers. Claimed I was a militant granddaughter who had brainwashed his dying parents into abandoning their only son. He even used the phrase emotional hostage-taking. It was laughable, but I didn't laugh. I saved the link just in case. Because I know people like that. They don't stop until they think they've rewritten the past. So, I started building something that couldn't be rewritten. I founded the Hall Foundation 6 months after Grandma died. Small, local, focused. Its mission: provide in-home support for aging veterans who don't have family to care for them. Nurses, transportation, grief counseling, burial honor guards. All covered. No questions asked. I used Grandpa's money. His house became the foundation's first office. His study, once locked tight, turned into a space for legal aid and will preparation free of charge. We printed a brochure with his photo and that same line he'd scrawled so many years ago. Honor before comfort. People showed up. Old Marines, quiet Army medics. One man from the Coast Guard who hadn't spoken to his family in 20 years but came every Friday just to drink burnt coffee and talk about the weather. They told me stories about broken families, about dying wives, about hospital visits where no one came except a volunteer in a vest and a folded flag. One of them, Harold, a 91-year-old Navy radio tech, broke down in tears when I told him we'd cover his rent and send a nurse twice a week. He held my hand and whispered, "I thought I was done being remembered." The local paper did a story on us. Front page. Granddaughter turns betrayal into brotherhood. The Hall Foundation serves forgotten veterans. My mother sent me a screenshot of it. No words, just a red question mark. I didn't respond because there was nothing to say. They had their chance to show up and they didn't. A year later, we held our first Memorial Day event. Not the big one with flags and speeches and parades. Ours was different. A quiet ceremony in the backyard of the old Hall home. 37 folding chairs. A table with name cards. One empty chair up front with Grandpa's photo and a single bronze star on a velvet square. I stood up to speak. Told the truth about war, about absence, about how legacy isn't what you pass down in your will. It's who shows up when nobody's watching. I read the last words Grandpa ever wrote to me. In the end, don't fight for applause. Fight for the ones who aren't in the room to clap. When the ceremony ended, a man walked up to me in full dress blues. Late 30s, seal insignia. Chest full of ribbons. He said, "I served with your cousin, Michael. He told me what your family tried to do." I tensed, ready for a lecture. But the man smiled, slow and sure. "Damn proud of you," he said. "Takes guts to walk alone." I still visit the grave every few months. Not out of duty, not even grief really, just to check in. To sit down, breathe in that clean air, and know that no matter how loud the world gets, I once chose the harder path and stayed. Stayed with the woman who raised me, stayed when the rest left. Stayed long enough to hold a hand, sign a paper, and carry a legacy that blood alone couldn't earn. Some people inherit money. I inherited purpose. And unlike money, purpose doesn't run out. It grows silently, like honor does. If this story stayed with you, we ask just one thing. Remember her. Not for the uniform, not for the fight, but for the silence she held when others shouted over truth. This is Honor Line, and we tell stories no one else will. Subscribe if you're still here. It means you were meant to be.